A tired man clutching a pink unicorn lunchbox stood surrounded by elite mercenaries. They laughed, calling him a glorified babysitter. 30 seconds later, the room's most lethal fighter lay unconscious on the training mat, and a billionaire CEO was staring at the single dad in absolute, breathless shock. The air inside the Praetorian Executive Protection Facility in downtown Chicago tasted of chalk dust, stale adrenaline, and overpriced cologne. It was a cavernous, state-of-the-art tactical warehouse, all polished concrete and matte black steel, designed to forge human shields for the world's most vulnerable 1%. Noah Reynolds did not look like a human shield. Standing near the edge of the blue polyurethane training mats, Noah looked like a man who had just finished a 12-hour shift at a mid-level accounting firm. He was 38, with salt and pepper hair cut short, and tired, pale blue eyes that carried the heavy bags of chronic sleep deprivation. He wore a faded gray suit jacket over a plain black t-shirt and dark denim jeans that had seen better days. But the most glaring violation of the room's hyper-masculine aesthetic was the bright pink, glitter-crusted thermos he held loosely in his left hand. It belonged to Lily. His 7-year-old daughter had accidentally left it in his beat-up 2008 Honda Civic that morning during the chaotic school drop-off. Noah hadn't had time to drive back to her elementary school. The tryout started at exactly 0800 hours, and being 1 minute late meant immediate disqualification. Around him, 30 of the most dangerous men in North America were stretching, taping their knuckles, and sizing each other up. There were former Navy SEALs, ex-French Foreign Legionnaires, and private military contractors who had cut their teeth in Fallujah and Kandahar. They wore brand-name tactical gear, compression shirts that hugged bulging biceps, and cargo pants covered in Velcro morale patches. Noah stood quietly, staring at the thermos, his thumb running over a dent near the lid. "Did you take a wrong turn at the daycare center, buddy?" The voice was thick, arrogant, and loud enough to draw the attention of half the room. Noah looked up. Dominic Russo was a mountain of a man, standing 6'3" and weighing 230 pounds of pure, engineered muscle. Russo was the undisputed alpha of the private security world right now. He had spent 4 years running high-risk extractions in Bogota before transitioning to corporate security. With his shaved head, tribal tattoos curling up his thick neck, and a jawline carved from granite, Russo looked like violence incarnate. "The janitor's closet is down the hall," Russo continued, pointing a heavily taped thumb over his shoulder. Several of the other contractors chuckled, a low chorus of deep, grating laughter. Noah didn't blink. He simply looked at Russo, his expression entirely neutral. "I'm here for the selection," he said, his voice quiet, calm, and completely devoid of intimidation. Russo barked a laugh, stepping closer. He towered over Noah's 5'10" frame. "The selection? For the Hayes contract? Look around, Pops. This isn't a mall cop tryout. Victoria Hayes has a hit out on her from half the biotech underground. If you're standing next to her when the bullets start flying, you're going to get her killed. And worse, you're going to get in my way." Noah felt the familiar, cold pragmatism wash over him. He had spent a decade in a classified intelligence unit, operating in environments where looking tough was a quick way to get shot. Survival wasn't about bulging veins or intimidating banter. It was about geometry, leverage, and being entirely unremarkable, right up until the moment you needed to be lethal. But he wasn't here for pride. He was here for the $250,000 annual salary, plus full premium medical benefits. Lily needed a specialized pulmonary reconstruction surgery at Johns Hopkins. His savings were completely decimated. The bank was threatening foreclosure on their modest townhouse in Oak Park. This tryout wasn't an ego trip. It was the only thing keeping his daughter alive. "I'll try to stay out of your way, Dominic," Noah replied evenly, reading the man's name off his registration badge. He deliberately broke eye contact, looking back down at the pink thermos. It was the ultimate insult in the posturing game of alpha males refusing to acknowledge a threat. Russo's jaw tightened. He took a half step forward, his posture shifting into a pre-assault indicator, chest puffed, shoulders dropping. "You better." "Line up," a voice boomed over the facility's PA system. Richard Cole, the head of security for Horizon Biotech, marched onto the balcony overlooking the training floor. Cole was a severe man in his 50s, wearing a sharp charcoal suit. Beside him stood a woman who instantly commanded the gravity in the room. Victoria Hayes, the billionaire CEO of Horizon Biotech, looked down at the men. She was 34, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy blazer and a crisp white blouse. Her dark hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her brown eyes swept over the candidates with cold, calculating precision. 2 weeks ago, a rival corporate espionage team from Apex Dynamics had bypassed her estate's security, disabling her vehicles and leaving a bullet on the hood of her Mercedes. She didn't need a bodyguard. She needed a ghost. "Gentlemen," Cole's voice echoed, "Miss Hayes is not looking for a bouncer. She is looking for an apex predator who knows how to wear a tuxedo. Over the next 8 hours, we will break you down. If you fail the marksmanship, you go home. If you fail the tactical assessment, you go home. If you quit on the mat, you go home. Do we understand each other?" A collective, guttural "yes, sir" echoed through the warehouse. Noah remained silent. He gently placed Lily's pink thermos near his gym bag by the wall, rolled his shoulders once, and stepped into the line. Victoria Hayes leaned over the balcony railing, her eyes scanning the row of massive, heavily armed men. She frowned slightly. "They all look like thugs, Richard." "They're operators, Victoria," Cole corrected gently. "Russo, specifically. He's the best in the business. He can rip a man's head off with his bare hands." Victoria's gaze drifted past Russo and landed on candidate number 14. He was smaller than the rest. He wore a faded gray jacket. He looked entirely out of place. "What about him?" she asked, gesturing slightly. Cole squinted. "Reynolds? His file is heavily redacted. Claims he was a logistics coordinator for the State Department. Probably pulled a string to get an interview. He won't last the morning." Victoria watched Noah. While the other men were bouncing on their toes, burning nervous energy, Noah was perfectly still, his breathing slow and rhythmic. "We'll see," she murmured. The first phase of the gauntlet was the live fire stress test. The candidates were led into a subterranean shooting range where the temperature was deliberately kept at a freezing 45 degrees. Sirens blared intermittently, and strobe lights flashed, designed to induce sensory overload and mimic the chaos of an active shooter scenario. Dominic Russo was up first. He stepped into the booth, drew a custom Glock 19, and unleashed a barrage of fire. He moved aggressively, double-tapping the paper targets with terrifying speed. His grouping was tight, mostly headshots. The other contractors nodded in approval. When it was Noah's turn, the room seemed to collectively smirk. Noah picked up the standard issue Sig Sauer P 320 from the table. He didn't check his reflection, didn't do a fancy press check. He simply gripped the weapon. The buzzer sounded. The strobes flashed violently. Noah didn't rush. He raised the pistol, his movements smooth, almost agonizingly deliberate. Bang! Bang! He fired twice. He paused, rotated his torso slightly. Bang! He wasn't performing a dynamic entry. He was calculating angles. When the buzzer sounded again to signal the end of the drill, Cole hit the target retrieval button. Russo scoffed loudly. "Slow as molasses, pops. You'd be dead 3 times over." The paper target slid up to the firing line. Cole looked at it and frowned. There were no headshots. Instead, there were 3 perfectly placed holes. 2 dead center in the pelvic girdle, and 1 directly through the weapon-bearing hand of the paper silhouette. "Center mass is standard," Cole muttered, scribbling on his clipboard. "Pelvic shots are unconventional." "A headshot is a low-percentage target in a strobe environment," Noah said quietly, ejecting the magazine and clearing the chamber. "A shattered pelvis instantly collapses the threat's mobility, regardless of body armor. A shot to the gun hand disables their ability to return fire. It neutralizes the threat while minimizing the risk of a pass-through bullet hitting a civilian." Up in the observation booth, Victoria Hayes listened through the audio feed. She tilted her head, intrigued. "He didn't try to kill the target. He tried to stop the gun," she noted. "It lacks aggression," Cole argued. "We need someone who eliminates the threat entirely." "I need someone who doesn't accidentally shoot a bystander in a crowded gala," Victoria shot back. "Keep him in." The second phase was the situational awareness room. It was a massive soundstage, mocked up to look like a high-end charity dinner, complete with tables, mannequins, and live actors mingling. The candidates were given 2 minutes to walk through the room and identify potential security threats. Most of the candidates, including Russo, pointed out the obvious. The man with a bulky jacket that could conceal a weapon, the unlocked kitchen doors, the actor acting aggressively near the bar. When Noah walked into the room, he didn't look at the people acting suspiciously. He looked at the floor, the ceiling, and the lighting fixtures. He walked through the space in 60 seconds and stepped back out. Cole stood with his clipboard. "Well, Reynolds, what did you see?" "The bulky jacket is a distraction," Noah said, his voice flat. "The man is sweating profusely from his forehead, not his body. He's nervous, probably instructed to draw attention. The real threat is the waiter pouring champagne at table 4. Cole raised an eyebrow. "The waiter?" "He's pouring with his left hand, but his watch is on his right wrist, facing inward, typical for someone who shoots right-handed and wants to protect the glass face. Moreover, he's wearing an ill-fitting uniform, but his shoes are Salvatore Ferragamo Oxfords. A caterer doesn't wear $1,000 dress shoes to a shift. He's an interloper." Silence hung in the hallway. Cole looked down at his master sheet. Noah had perfectly identified the hidden assassin that 9 other candidates had missed. Noah didn't stop. Furthermore, the chandelier above the VIP table is rigged to a secondary winch system that isn't connected to the building's main power grid. If someone wanted to create a diversion, dropping it would block the primary exit. The only viable extraction route for the principal is through the service elevator, but the emergency brake has a padlock on it. You need to fire the maintenance staff. Victoria Hayes pressed the intercom button from the observation deck. Her voice crackled through the speakers in the hallway. "Mr. Reynolds, how did you notice a padlock on a service elevator from across a crowded room?" Noah looked up at the camera, lens mounted in the corner. "I didn't, Miss Hayes. I checked the reflection in the polished silver serving trays the waiters were carrying. It gave me a 360-degree view of the room's blind spots without having to turn my head." Victoria sat back in her leather chair, a genuine smile playing on her lips for the first time in weeks. Fascinating. Down in the hall, Russo bumped his shoulder hard against Noah as he walked past. "Cute parlor tricks, Dad," Russo hissed under his breath. But when things go loud, a keen eye doesn't mean squat if you can't throw a punch. "I'm going to break you in the CQC phase." Noah stumbled slightly from the impact, recovering his balance. He didn't retaliate. He just thought of the medical bills on his kitchen counter, the sound of Lily wheezing in her sleep. He adjusted his frayed suit jacket and followed the group to the mats. By 1400 hours, the candidate pool had been halved. 15 men remained. They were ushered back into the main warehouse, where a massive, padded fighting ring had been assembled. "Close quarters combat," Cole announced, pacing around the edge of the mat. "No weapons, no groin strikes, no eye gouges. Everything else is fair game. You fight until submission, knockout, or I call it miss." Hayes wants to know what happens when your gun jams and the threat is within arm's reach. The fights were brutal. These were large, highly trained men fighting for a life-changing contract. Blood stained the blue mats within the first 20 minutes. Noses were broken, shoulders were dislocated. Dominic Russo was a machine. In his first bout, he faced a massive former Marine. Russo didn't just defeat him, he dismantled him. He slipped a jab, delivered a punishing liver strike, and when the Marine doubled over, Russo locked him in a guillotine choke, squeezing until the man passed out and collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Russo stood over the unconscious body, chest heaving, roaring to the remaining candidates. "Who's next? Come on!" Up in the booth, Victoria winced. "Is that level of violence necessary, Richard?" "Absolutely," Cole replied, his eyes gleaming with approval. "You want a monster to fight the monsters, Victoria. Russo is the apex. No one here can touch him." Down on the floor, Cole read off the clipboard. "Reynolds, you're up." Noah slowly took off his suit jacket, folding it neatly and placing it next to his gym bag and Lily's pink thermos. He rolled up the sleeves of his black t-shirt, revealing forearms that were corded with dense, lean muscle, a stark contrast to his unassuming posture. Russo grinned, exposing a mouth guard. He waved off the man who was supposed to fight Noah. "No, no," Russo said, pointing a heavily taped finger at Noah. "I want the dad." "Let me test him, Cole." Cole hesitated, looking up at the booth. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes locked on Noah. She gave a subtle nod. "All right, Russo. You have Reynolds," Cole called out. "Keep it clean." Noah stepped onto the mat. He didn't take a traditional fighting stance. He didn't bounce on his toes or raise his fist to his chin. He simply stood there, his feet shoulder-width apart, his hands open and relaxed at his waist. To the untrained eye, he looked like a man waiting for a bus. The room erupted in jeers. "Put him to sleep, Dom. Don't break his hip. He's got a PTA meeting." Russo laughed. "I'm going to make this quick, Pops. You should have stayed at home with the kid." Noah's eyes, previously dull and exhausted, suddenly hardened. A cold, terrifying clarity washed over his features. The OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide. ACT was a military concept, but for Noah, it was a biological rhythm. He had already processed Russo's stance. Russo was heavy on his lead left foot, a boxer-brawler hybrid who relied on kinetic transfer from his hips to generate knockout power in his right hand. He was aggressive, overconfident, and structurally flawed. "Begin!" Cole barked. Russo exploded forward. He closed the distance in a fraction of a second, launching a devastating right cross aimed directly at Noah's jaw. It was a punch meant to end the fight instantly, carrying 230 pounds of momentum behind it. Noah didn't block. Blocking a strike from a man that large was a foolish waste of energy. Instead, Noah simply wasn't there. With a microscopic pivot of his rear foot, Noah slipped his head barely an inch to the outside. Russo's massive fist sailed past Noah's ear, clipping the air. Because Russo had thrown everything into the punch expecting impact, his momentum carried him forward, overextending his center of gravity. In a blur of motion too fast for the other contractors to process, Noah stepped inside Russo's guard. He didn't throw a wild haymaker. He used physics. Noah brought his open left palm up, striking Russo sharply at the hinge of the jaw, not to break bone, but to violently scramble the fluid in the inner ear, disrupting Russo's equilibrium. As Russo's eyes rolled slightly from the sudden vertigo, Noah used his right arm to frame against Russo's chest, creating a fulcrum. Simultaneously, Noah swept his right leg behind Russo's overcommitted lead ankle. It was a perfectly executed textbook, Osotogari sweep, modified for lethal CQC. Noah pushed forward on the chest, while reaping the leg out from under the giant. Russo had no base. His feet flew out from under him, and his 230-pound frame crashed onto the mat with a sickening, explosive thud that vibrated through the floorboards. But Noah wasn't done. As Russo hit the ground, the impact knocked the wind out of his lungs. Before Russo's brain could even register the fall, Noah dropped with him, instantly transitioning his weight. Noah's knee drove with pinpoint accuracy into Russo's floating rib, pinning him to the mat. In the same fluid motion, Noah snaked his arm under Russo's chin, locking in a rear-naked choke. He didn't squeeze with his biceps. He expanded his chest and arched his back, applying immediate, inescapable pressure to the carotid arteries. Russo's eyes snapped wide open in sheer panic. He thrashed, his massive arms flailing, trying to grab Noah's head. But Noah's positioning was flawless. He was completely out of Russo's reach, clinging to his back like a shadow. 5 seconds. Russo's thrashing grew desperate. He tried to bridge, trying to use his immense strength to throw Noah off. Noah simply rode the movement, tightening the grip. 10 seconds. Russo's movement slowed. His face turned a deep shade of crimson, then purple. His hands dropped to his sides, twitching slightly. 12 seconds. Dominic Russo, the undisputed terror of the private security circuit, went completely limp. Noah held the choke for exactly 2 more seconds to ensure complete unconsciousness, then calmly released his grip. He stood up, smoothing a wrinkle out of his black t-shirt. He wasn't breathing heavily. He didn't flex. He didn't yell. The silence in the warehouse was absolute. It was a suffocating, heavy, quiet, broken only by the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights. 30 men, all hardened killers, stood frozen, their mouths slightly parted. They stared at the giant on the mat, and then at the tired father standing over him. Up in the observation booth, Richard Cole dropped his clipboard. It hit the floor with a sharp clatter. Victoria Hayes was already standing. Her hands were pressed flat against the glass of the window, her eyes wide, breathless. She stared down at Noah Reynolds, who was already walking away from the center of the ring. Noah didn't look at the crowd. He walked over to the wall, picked up his folded suit jacket, and carefully picked up Lily's pink unicorn thermos. He checked his watch. If they wrapped this up soon, he could still make it home in time to cook her dinner. "Mr. Cole," Victoria said, her voice trembling slightly, entirely devoid of her usual icy composure. "Yes, Victoria?" Cole stammered, still staring down at the unconscious Russo. "Hire him, whatever he wants. Hire the dad." The paperwork was signed the following morning in the penthouse office of the Horizon Biotech Tower. Noah sat across the massive mahogany desk from Victoria Hayes. He still wore a slightly wrinkled suit, looking entirely out of place amidst the million-dollar art pieces and panoramic views of Lake Michigan. Richard Cole stood in the corner of the office, his arms crossed tight against his chest, his jaw set in a hard, resentful line. Cole had spent the last 24 hours aggressively lobbying against Noah's hiring, citing a lack of traditional VIP protection pedigree. Victoria ignored her head of security. She pushed a sleek, leather-bound folder across the desk. "The starting salary is $250,000, as advertised," Victoria said, her dark eyes studying him intently. "However, I had my team do a deep background check on you last night, Mr. Reynolds. I don't like mysteries in my inner circle. You spent 12 years in the CIA's Special Activities Center, Ground Branch. You weren't a logistics coordinator, you were a ghost. You specialized in non-permissive environment extractions." Noah didn't flinch at the revelation of his classified past. He simply kept his hands folded in his lap. "I have a daughter, Miss Hayes, Lily. The agency life doesn't accommodate single fathers. I retired. I need stability." Victoria nodded slowly, tapping a manicured fingernail on the glass surface of her desk. "I also saw her medical files. Johns Hopkins, pulmonary reconstruction. The wait list is 2 years, and your insurance denied the experimental graft." Noah's calm facade cracked for a fraction of a second. A muscle feathered in his jaw. "That's why I'm here." "Not anymore," Victoria said softly. She slid a secondary piece of paper across the desk. It was a wire transfer receipt from a private offshore account directly to the Johns Hopkins Pediatric Surgery Wing. "I called the hospital board at 6 a.m. Horizon Biotech is now their primary research sponsor. Lily's surgery is scheduled for next Tuesday. Fully funded. Consider it a signing bonus." Noah stared at the receipt. The numbers blurred slightly. For the first time in years, the crushing, suffocating weight pressing down on his chest evaporated. He looked up at the billionaire CEO, his pale blue eyes reflecting a profound, unspoken vow. "You just bought my life, Miss Hayes." "I don't want your life, Noah," Victoria replied, a grim smile touching her lips. "I want you to protect mine. Apex Dynamics hasn't backed off. The police are useless, and my board thinks I'm paranoid. I need someone who sees the knife before it's drawn." Over the next 6 months, Noah Reynolds became a permanent fixture in Victoria's world. He was the antithesis of the stereotypical bodyguard. He didn't wear mirrored sunglasses, and he didn't bark into a radio on his wrist. He was a master of ambient proximity. At board meetings, he looked like a mid-level analyst taking notes. At high society galas, he faded into the background like catering staff. But his presence was absolute. He reorganized her transport routes daily. He vetted the background of every executive who shook her hand. He isolated vulnerabilities in her estate's architecture that even high-tech security firms had missed. Richard Cole hated him. Cole's grand, heavily armed security protocols felt clumsy and expensive compared to Noah's surgical efficiency. Cole relied on intimidation. Noah relied on invisibility. The tension between the two men simmered. A quiet, cold war fought in the margins of Victoria's schedule. The boiling point arrived in mid-November, during the apex of Chicago's philanthropic season. Horizon Biotech was hosting the Global Innovation Gala at the historic Field Museum. It was a massive, sprawling event, boasting a guest list of over 500 politicians, foreign dignitaries, and tech moguls. The museum, with its cavernous halls, towering dinosaur skeletons, and hundreds of blind corners, was a tactical nightmare. Noah stood in the shadows near the grand staircase overlooking Stanley Field Hall. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, though his earpiece was nearly invisible. Below him, the elite of Chicago mingled, sipping champagne beneath the towering bones of Maximo the Titanosaur. Victoria was holding court near the center of the room, looking radiant in a dark, emerald evening gown. She was flanked by two of Cole's tactical contractors, who stood stiffly, radiating tension. Eagle 1, this is Roost. Cole's voice crackled in Noah's earpiece. Perimeter is secure. The mayor's detail is moving through the south exit. I'm rotating the exterior patrol. Copy, Roost, Noah replied quietly. Noah's eyes scanned the room, his biological OODA loop processing 1,000 micro details per second. The clinking of glasses, the cadence of footsteps on marble, the positioning of the service staff. Something was wrong. It wasn't an obvious threat. It was a dissonance in the rhythm of the room. Noah checked his watch. 2,100 hours. The primary catering crew from Gourmet Chicago had finished their dinner service and were supposed to be clearing plates. But 4 men in catering uniforms were lingering near the north corridor, the hallway leading to the museum's administrative elevators. Noah focused on them. They were moving heavy, stainless steel food warmers, but their posture was entirely wrong for hospitality workers. Their weight distribution was shifted forward, their eyes constantly sweeping the balconies rather than the floor. Roost, this is Eagle 1, Noah murmured into his lapel. I have 4 unauthorized caterers loitering at the north corridor. I'm moving to investigate. Static hissed in his ear. Negative. Eagle 1, Cole's voice snapped back immediately. They are cleared. Late night dessert prep. Maintain your position on the stairs. Do not break visual on the principal. Noah frowned. He pulled up the digital manifest on his encrypted smartphone. The dessert prep had been completed at 2,000 hours. There was no late night service scheduled. Furthermore, the north corridor didn't lead to the kitchens. It led directly to the museum's subterranean loading docks. Noah's gaze snapped toward the security command center on the mezzanine level. He could see Cole standing behind the glass, looking down at the gala, but Cole wasn't looking at Victoria. Cole was looking directly at the north corridor. A cold realization washed over Noah. Cole had spent the last 2 months slowly bleeding his authority. But Cole was a man who craved power, and Apex Dynamics was a company with bottomless pockets and a ruthless desire to acquire Horizon Biotech through any means necessary, including the elimination of its CEO. Noah didn't argue on the radio. He dropped his earpiece into his pocket, severing his connection to Cole's compromised network. He moved. He didn't run. Running drew attention. He glided down the staircase, moving through the crowd with the fluidity of water slipping through stones. Suddenly, the grand ambient lighting of Stanley Field Hall died. The room was plunged into absolute darkness for 3 terrifying seconds before the emergency backup generators kicked in, bathing the museum in dim, sickly yellow light. Panic erupted. Guests screamed, dropping glasses that shattered loudly on the marble floor. Move the principal! VIP extraction protocol! Cole's voice boomed over the museum's PA system, masking the chaos. Take her to the secondary holding room, north corridor! Noah broke into a sprint. Cole was funneling Victoria directly into the kill zone. Victoria Hayes was disoriented. The moment the lights cut out, the 2 tactical contractors flanking her grabbed her by the arms and dragged her toward the north hallway. What is happening? She demanded, struggling against their iron grips. Where is Noah? Threat detected, ma'am. One of the contractors barked. Mr. Cole ordered an immediate extraction. Keep your head down. They shoved her through the heavy wooden doors of the north corridor, away from the screaming crowd in the main hall. The hallway was dimly lit, flanked by glass exhibits displaying ancient pottery. Waiting for them at the end of the hall were the 4 men in catering uniforms, except they were no longer pretending to be waiters. They had unzipped their uniforms to reveal matte black tactical vests, and they were leveling suppressed submachine guns at the approaching group. Standing behind them, wearing a dark suit and a grim smile, was Richard Cole. And stepping out from the shadows beside Cole, holding a heavy tactical shotgun, was a ghost from the training mats. Dominic Russo. The giant's jaw was still slightly swollen from where Noah had struck him 6 months prior, and his eyes burned with homicidal anticipation. The two contractors holding Victoria abruptly stopped. They didn't draw their weapons. They simply let go of her and stepped aside, merging with the hit squad. Victoria stood alone in the hallway, the chilling reality of the betrayal freezing the blood in her veins. "I told you, Victoria," Cole said smoothly, stepping forward. "You needed a monster to fight the monsters. You just hired the wrong one. Apex Dynamics sends their regards. They are very eager to absorb your patents once the board assumes control following your tragic, senseless murder during a botched robbery." Victoria straightened her posture, refusing to cower. "You're a coward, Richard." Russo racked the shotgun, the metallic clack-clack echoing off the marble walls. "Where's the dad, Cole? You promised me the dad." "Forget him," Cole snapped. "Take the shot. We have 2 minutes before CPD establishes a perimeter." Russo leveled the shotgun at Victoria's chest. From the ceiling ventilation shaft directly above the hit squad, a heavy brass fire extinguisher plummeted downward. It crashed onto the marble floor with the force of a bomb, the pressurized canister rupturing instantly. A massive, blinding cloud of thick, white chemical foam exploded into the narrow hallway, engulfing Cole, Russo, and the mercenaries. Coughing and shouting erupted in the smoke. Noah dropped silently from the shadows of the mezzanine balcony above, landing right behind the rearmost mercenary. He didn't waste movement drawing a gun. Close quarters in a chaotic, low-visibility environment meant firearms were a liability. Noah used the darkness and the smoke. He was a ghost, and this was his graveyard. He struck the first mercenary at the base of the skull with the heavy edge of a tactical flashlight he had retrieved from a wall mount. The man folded silently. Noah stripped the suppressor-equipped pistol from the falling man's hand. Thwip, thwip. 2 suppressed shots echoed softly, dropping the 2 contractors who had betrayed Victoria. They fell before they even knew they were under attack. "Contact right!" one of the catering mercs screamed, firing blindly into the foam. The bullets shattered a glass exhibit case, raining ancient shards onto the floor. Noah slid beneath the line of fire, driving a brutal elbow into the mercenary's knee, shattering the joint. As the man screamed and dropped, Noah pivoted, catching the man in a sleeper hold, choking him into unconsciousness in 3 seconds. The foam began to settle. Victoria was pressed flat against the wall, her eyes wide as she watched Noah dismantle a team of elite killers with terrifying, emotionless precision. He wasn't breathing heavily. His tuxedo jacket was still buttoned. Russo saw him through the thinning smoke. The giant roared, a sound of pure hatred, and swung the barrel of the shotgun toward Noah. Noah was out of range for a physical strike, and his stolen pistol was empty. He didn't retreat. Instead, he lunged forward, kicking the dropped submachine gun of a fallen mercenary directly at Russo's shins. The heavy metal weapon struck Russo's legs, causing him to stumble slightly. His shotgun blast went wide, blowing a massive hole in the ceiling plaster. Before Russo could pump the action for a second shot, Noah closed the gap. Russo dropped the shotgun and swung a massive, looping right hook. It was the exact same punch from the tryouts. He hadn't learned. Noah ducked under the wild swing, but this time, he didn't sweep the leg. He stepped inside Russo's guard, his hands moving with blinding speed. He delivered a devastating palm strike to Russo's solar plexus, driving the air from the giant's lungs. Before Russo could double over, Noah grabbed Russo by the tactical vest, planted his foot, and executed a perfect judo sacrifice throw, a tomoe nage. Noah rolled onto his back, pulling Russo's massive 230-pound frame over him, using Russo's own forward momentum to launch the giant through the air. Russo flew over Noah and crashed head-first into a solid marble pillar. The sickening crack of bone against stone echoed in the hall. Russo slumped to the ground, out cold, completely broken. Noah rolled back to his feet in one fluid motion. Only Richard Cole remained. The head of security was pale, trembling, holding a small backup pistol pointed unsteadily at Noah. "Stay back!" Cole screamed, his authoritative facade completely shattered. "I'll kill her! I'll kill both of you!" Noah slowly raised his empty hands. He took a slow, deliberate step forward. "You failed the stress test, Richard," Noah said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Don't take another step." Noah's eyes flicked over Cole's shoulder. "You also failed the situational awareness test." Cole frowned, momentarily confused. He instinctively glanced over his shoulder. It was a rookie mistake. In that microsecond of distraction, Noah closed the distance. He slapped the pistol aside with his left hand, the weapon discharging harmlessly into the floor. With his right hand, Noah grabbed Cole by the throat, lifted him an inch off the ground, and slammed him against the wall. Cole choked, his legs kicking uselessly. "Police are 3 minutes out," Noah whispered coldly into Cole's ear. "You are going to confess everything about Apex Dynamics, or I will let you out of jail, and I will find you myself. Do we understand each other?" Cole, his face turning blue, managed a frantic, terrified nod. Noah released him. Cole collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, clutching his bruised throat. Noah turned away from the carnage, adjusting the cuffs of his tuxedo. He walked over to Victoria, who was still leaning against the wall, staring at him as if looking at a mythological creature. "Are you injured, Miss Hayes?" Noah asked softly. Victoria took a shaky breath, smoothing her gown. A profound sense of awe washed over her. No, I am perfectly fine, Noah." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as the Chicago Police Department descended upon the Field Museum. Noah pulled his phone from his pocket. He checked the time. It was 9:45 p.m. "If the police need my statement, tell them I'll be in the office tomorrow morning," Noah said, turning toward the service exit. Victoria blinked in surprise. "Where are you going? The authorities will need to secure the scene." Noah paused, looking back over his shoulder. The lethal, cold operator vanished, replaced once again by the tired father. "The hospital visiting hours end at 10:30, Miss Hayes," Noah said with a small, genuine smile. "Lily likes it when I read to her before she falls asleep. I promised her I wouldn't be late." He pushed through the heavy service doors, fading into the Chicago night, leaving the billionaire and the broken mercenaries behind him. Noah proved that the deadliest weapon in any room isn't the loudest mouth or the biggest muscles. It's the quiet resolve of a father fighting for his child. Real strength doesn't need to posture. It only strikes when necessary. Did Noah's tactical brilliance and dedication to Lily keep you on the edge of your seat? If you loved this intense story of redemption and vengeance, like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling, real-life, inspired dramas.
Hi, my name is Hidden Princess, the owner and manager of Hidden Princess. After watching the video, they mocked a single dad at a CEO's Bodyguard tryout. Then he dropped the top fighter. I'd really like to know what you think. How did this story make you feel? What stood out to me most was how calm confidence spoke louder than appearances. This story reminds us that real strength often stays quiet until the moment it truly matters, and that judging someone too quickly can make us miss who they really are. Which moment surprised you the most? Do you think staying humble is one of the greatest strengths a person can have? It's a good reminder to look beyond first impressions and give people a fair chance. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you'd like to see more stories like this, feel free to like and subscribe.